Rebound down to Jamal Murray. Less than a minute go. Three-pointer would be nice. Murray right to the rack. Gets hammered, and he'll go. They're just going to say he lost that. That's a challenge.
He's hurt. Jamal's hurt.
And he's grabbing his left knee, and he is in severe amount of pain.
This is a worst-case scenario, sports fans. This is not what you wanted to see. Losing a game is nothing, but losing a star like Jamal Murray would be something.
I'm telling you what, he never looks like he's in agony.
No.
Even though this guy always plays with 5 or 6 parts of his body's hurting. Let's see here, Vic. It's the naked leg.
Last night, when I was sitting down to do Between the Pipes about, let's call it 7-8 hours ago, right here in this chair, I was staring across the table at my partner, Mark Springer, about to talk about a 4-2 Avalanche victory over the Arizona Coyotes. And typically, to let you into our little home here above Colorado Boulevard at the Michelob Ultra Studios, when we do late games, Mark Bertinoli hangs around, who's the studio voice on the Altitude Radio Network of both your Denver Nuggets and your Colorado Avalanche, as well as the Rapids. Typically, Berto hangs around for 3-4 minutes because he's had a long day of doing pre-games, post-games, intermission reports. He sanitizes his workstation, gives me some knucks, says goodbye to our producer behind the glass, and walks out the door. Spring and I are about halfway through our first segment talking about the Avs and a big win and Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen scoring his 300th point in the National Hockey League. And I can't see anything on our television screens above me, to my left and to my right, in the corners of my periphery. But Berto, I can see. And I'm looking at him through this pane of glass. It's about a 12-foot by 5.5-foot pane of glass that separates Martin Oleskowitz and myself. And Berto's still here. 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes after his show. And we go on. Because he's still watching the end of the Nuggets game. And even though I can't see it, the Nuggets were losing at that point, 111-104, under a minute to go in the game after an atrocious third quarter and an all-time game from Stephen Curry. And I see Berto's face distort. Normally, Berto's a very happy guy. I see smiles out of him, flowing gray locks, and his face changes like that. And I looked at Spring and I went, something just happened in the Nuggets game and I don't like it. Spring couldn't see it here because we didn't have the game on the TVs. We were just ready to do an Avalanche post-game show. And what Berto was watching that we were not privy to at the time was Jamal Murray taking a rebound from a missed Stephen Curry 3, which seemingly did not happen at all last night. And he drives the lane and plants his left foot about 3 feet past the elbow in the yellow paint at Chase Center in the Bay Area. And almost 8 years to the day, you can look it up, April 4th against the Dallas Mavericks, Danilo Gallinari. There's a lot of parallels here because after the Danilo Gallinari injury, the Golden State Warriors beat the Nuggets in 6 in the playoffs, and that's all she wrote. Jamal Murray plants on his left knee. His knee goes inward and buckles. He goes up to make the layup, and about a quarter second later, the ball comes back down to his midsection. He grimaces, goes down to the floor, lands on that left foot, mind you, and I don't like that part of this injury, lands on that left foot on the baseline and starts writhing around in pain. And you heard the call in the Altitude Radio Network. It was on AM 950 last night with Kaz and our own Vic Lombardi. Kaz thought he got fouled. It looked like that in real time. And Vic knew almost instantaneously that something was gravely wrong or possibly gravely wrong with Jamal's left knee. He had missed 4 games with right knee soreness. Who knows if this was a circumstance of compensating for that right knee. Who knows? Maybe it was a freak accident. Maybe it was the fact that National Basketball Association players are playing a condensed schedule on little rest. They came back immediately after the bubble. It's a 72-game season that they're trying to pack in before the Olympic Games start. We've seen many players this year go out with injuries, soft tissue injuries, lower body injuries. That probably plays a factor in what happened last night, but Jamal Murray goes down in a heap, clutching his left knee, and you can see it. Steph Curry was the one that I saw when I was watching the replay on ESPN last night. Steph Curry was the one who realized how bad it possibly could be. And as we sit here, 6:06 in the morning on a Tuesday, just hours after this injury occurred, it was a late tip out in Golden State in San Francisco. We know Jamal went and got an MRI last night. We don't have any updates from the team as to how that MRI went. I would assume we hear something between the hours of 7 and 10 a.m. I would assume. And for me, the conjecture thing, you hear it all the time on radio and TV. We're not going to conjecture, we're not going to make assumptions as to what the injury is. I'm not going to make an assumption, but I'll tell you, it looked ACL-ish. You're hoping it's a hyperextension of the knee. Jamal is hoping that it's a hyperextension and he's out for a handful of weeks and he doesn't have to go through surgery. He doesn't have to have a 9 to 12 month recovery period. Because we've seen this story. We've seen it right here in Denver, almost 8 years to the day that Gallinari tries to drive the lane against Dirk Nowitzki on the exact same side. He plants his left leg, his left knee buckles inward. And your previously juggernaut Denver Nuggets that year in the 2012-2013 season don't have the firepower of their stretch forward, who they got. He's the main piece, obviously, in that Carmelo Anthony trade at the time. They end up falling to Golden State in 6 games in the playoffs just a few weeks later. And what happens from then on? The Nuggets start floundering, right? They finished 2nd in the Northwest that season, then they finished 4th. In 2013-2014, the following season, they finished 4th yet again.
It was a window closer.
It was an exact window closer. The year after that, they finished 10th. They were able to select in the lottery and get the exact player that we're talking about right now. It was a window closer. And Marty, it's well documented. You're from the Chicago area. You worked for the Bulls. Speaking of window closers, and I don't want to be the Grim Reaper here, but I have to level with you. It looked really bad, and for a team that is quite literally in a championship window, they showed you that they believed in this roster at the trade deadline when they went out and they got Aaron Gordon for defensive purposes in playoff scenarios. They believe they're in a championship window. The Nuggets back in 2012-2013, I don't know if they knew they were in a championship window, but they were in a better situation than they were with Carmelo Anthony. That team took off after the trade. They looked great. And then Danilo goes down with the knee injury, and the team flounders for 2-3 years, and they go and finish 10th a handful of years later. And it's not until now, last year, 2 years ago, where we're talking about this Nuggets team resurging. You saw the same thing in Illinois, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, Derrick Rose, they were in a championship window in 2011-12. He tore that ACL, and he was out for 2 years, basically. Then they also had to deal with LeBron, so that didn't help. But his injuries were recurring, so they could never really get back up to where they were. But the worst part about this injury is the timing. It's April 13th. This is at least a 8 to 12 month recovery. that it brings you to what, December, February of next year?
Yeah, the
Talking
timeline
worst case
isn't
scenario
great
here, of course.
The timeline isn't great. Best case scenario is a hyperextended knee and you sit him out, hopefully through the first round of the playoffs. Because as you said, during that Derrick Rose MVP season, what was it, 2011, 2012, he comes back from the knee injury, and then Derrick Rose is never the same again. We saw flashes of brilliance here and there, but it was never the dynamic point guard who's driving the lane, making spinning runners, just being an absolute freak inside the three-point arc. You don't, if it's as bad as I think it is, and who knows, I'm not a doctor, but I can see things with my own eyes. I've been
Dr. Raj MD.
Sounds better than it actually would be. If it's as bad as the video shows, and if we learn that it happens to be some sort of structural injury / tear, you don't want to rush this player back. You don't want to have a Derrick Rose situation. And I know Jamal's not the best point guard in the NBA, but he's a bona fide star. You can't tell me that losing Jamal Murray doesn't shut the door on this window, at least starting this year if he's out for the season. You can't run the risk of that injury becoming recurring. And I think that's the scariest thing here for Jamal Murray, is that if there's structural damage, you run the risk of not being the same player for the rest of your career. Sure, we've seen advancements in surgeries and certainly timelines to come back from devastating knee injuries, but it's still a reconstruction. And again, we sat here watching the game, and the third quarter for the Nuggets was ugly, right? They had 17 turnovers through, halfway or 3/4 of that third quarter in the game. They were outscored 43-22. It's nothing new that we haven't seen out of this team. They typically take a quarter a game off per night. It seems like this Nuggets team does. They don't know how to, finish. It didn't help that Steph Curry, on the night that he passes Wilt Chamberlain for the most points scored all time as a Golden State Warrior, goes off for 53 and hits 10 threes. But the rest of the team for Golden State couldn't miss either. I mean, you had 10 for 18 for Steph. Bazemore goes 50%. Draymond goes 67%. Lee off the bench goes 33% from three. Seemingly everyone hit on that team. And it was just another night where we were watching the Nuggets struggle off the bench. Facundo Campazzo got torched by Steph Curry. And Steph Curry turned around. Steph knows who he's playing. Steph knows that he's on national television. Turned around to the bench at one point and said, "Get him off of me." And what's Facu been so great at this year is being a pest, right? But Malone's got to get him off Curry at one point. You got to find a way to put someone on Steph to cool him down. That was a night where Steph wasn't going to miss, but you can't allow him to have 53, and you can't allow him to show up your new guard and look back at your bench and look you in the eye and say, he can't guard me, and continue to go back to the well. That can't happen. So we're watching all that unfold. Spring and I get on the air to do the Avs post-game show. I didn't think that the Nuggets really had a chance. They were down by 6, right? 6 or 7 when the injury hits. They're down by 7 with 50 seconds remaining. If Jamal makes that layup, you've got 49 seconds to go and you're down by 5. So maybe you got an outside opportunity, but the way that Golden State was playing, I would have put it in a lower percentile there. But that was worst case scenario. You can score 8 points in a fourth quarter. You can get outscored 43-22. You can let one of the greatest shooters of all time drop 53 on you. That's all fine. But if Jamal Murray's out long term, that is worst case scenario, Marty.
It's like you're talking about the game, and I watched it. I saw all those things happen, and then it's like I got the Men in Black flashlight when that Jamal Murray thing happened. I don't remember any of that
a thing,
stuff.
right?
The only thing that mattered was that injury. Good for you, Steph, and your points and stuff.
Yeah, history. We'll get any information that we can to throughout the morning on Jamal Murray's injury status, the severity of the injury on his left knee suffered late last night on ESPN in the Nuggets 116-107 loss to Golden State. They fall to 34-20. Jamal was playing all right at the time, finished with 17 points. He was 1 for 5 from 3. I wouldn't say he was great, wouldn't say he was horrible, but just knocking off the rust. And unfortunately, lands awkwardly on his left knee. I assume we will have some information coming in throughout the show, certainly between the hours of 7 and 10 for you guys. Keep it tuned right here to 92.5. Raj filling in for Brett as he's out on vacation all week. Vic and Mosier going to join me from 7 to 10 this morning. Stay tuned. 7:45, we'll be joined by general manager of your Colorado Avalanche and Hockey Hall of Famer Joe Sakic to talk about his trade deadline moves. At 6 in the morning with Brett Kane here on Altitude Sports Radio 92.5.